All right, and here is our fourth deck in the lineup, Tron, red green. I actually consider a lot of people play blue white versions of this. I consider the blue white version to be unplayable, and if you're gonna pick up Tron, I would highly recommend you go with red green. My reason is that blue white doesn't have the best way of assembling Tron. Like they aren't very fast at it. A lot of the times it's just you kind of have to hope it's in your hand, and like you can like there's some minimal card draw type cards to get there, but really no really good like tutor effects. Whereas this deck uses like Sylvan Scrying, the Ancient Stirrings, Expedition Map. It has access to a lot of cards that just assemble Tron on turn 3 very consistently. And I think that this version is probably the best version at getting that turn 3 Tron land, so you can cast a turn 3 Wormcoil or Karn uh, more often than any other version. So, pretty straightforward. Well, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward deck. It just uses the Tron lands, assembles these three, gets a ton of colorless mana, and then casts big, awesome colorless things. And uses. Grove of the Burn Willows is one of the cards that I feel like people are always playing like Copperline Gorge. I see that card in decks, and I really don't understand why. Like, Grove of the Burn Willows is just strictly a better card in my book because it's always untapped. And I don't know. It's just something to think about, I guess. Ghost Quarter is a card that I played this deck for a while. Ghost Quarter is one that I was not including back in the day. And Sasha, you and I talked about the what was it, Tolarian Academy in Mindslaver.
Right, to get the lock sideboard.
Right, and that's what I used to run in this slot. And you could run like a breeding pool or something just to get that blue in there. So you use the no, it's not Tolarian Academy. What am I saying?
Academy Ruins.
Did I said Tolarian Academy though, didn't I?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, just play Tolarian Academy. Don't, it's not a big deal. Actually, that'd be really good in this deck. So this deck, when you first pick it up, if you've never played this deck before, it takes a little bit to figure out because the way you draw cards and the way you add mana and how the chromatic stars and chromatic spheres kind of interact with adding colored mana to your mana pool for like Sylvan Scrying and Ancient Stirrings and Pyroclasm and all that nonsense. It'll take a little bit, so I recommend don't pick this up and go to a tournament without testing it first. The one of the
rule for every tournament.
True, but I mean, like, don't you feel like a deck like Red Deck Wins would be much easier to just pick up and take to a tournament, or Infect?
Sure, but I still want to play like 20 games in a day.
Yeah, well, me too. Ideally. So one of the strengths of this deck is the main deck Relic of Progenitus, and I've had a lot of people hate on this, but I really like the main deck Relic of Progenitus. It shuts off a lot of threats, like Storm with their what's Past in Flames, or Pyromancer's Ascension, and makes all Tarmogoyfs 0/1s, which is awesome. And it's just a nice little card, and you want to do a lot of cycling in this deck because you have tons of colorless mana with the Urzatron going on. So you can kind of afford to just be exiling all graveyards and drawing cards at all times. And so it's a nice little cantrip for us to have main deck. Actually, I remember playing this against Living End, and having this main deck against Travis Wu's Living End deck was just stupid because there's nothing they can do about it. And then Ancient Stirrings, I think, is the best, like, one in this deck. It's like the best preordain or ponder you could possibly ask for.
It's like if Ponder and Index met and had a baby.
I know it's so good. It's I remember my favorite card to cast was because you just know it's gonna hit something. You're like, okay, well, I need like a Tron land, or okay, I need a threat, and it's just like, here's a Wormcoil and a Karn and a Tron land and an Ulamog and like a Sylvan Scrying. It gets you what you need very easily, and you seldom blank on it. The Pyroclasm main deck seems a little weird looking at it at first, but it just kills everything in the format right now, and I actually like it even more now that Deathred Shaman has become more popular, because takes out Bob, takes out Deathrite, takes out Goyfs if they're 0/1s from your Relic of Progenitus, it takes out Delvers, etc., etc. Delver is one of your worst enemies in this deck. Just it puts a lot of pressure on you, and you're kind of trying to take it to the late game.
Right, it's a nice catch-all.
Yeah, I like this card in here. I mean, obviously, if you're going up against Storm, you decide it out, but there's enough creatures in the metagame that this is completely legitimate to main deck a playset of those. Sylvan Scrying is pretty obvious. Oblivion Stone, you can run anywhere from 1 to 4 of those. I recommend having at least 3 or 4 between the main board and the sideboard. It's just a good catch-all, destroy everything. Because obviously most of our stuff is already going to be dead off the board, or if we're like wrathing a worm coil, like we don't care. So, but yeah, for the most part, it's just a wrath. And
being colors is important too because of the ancient stirrings.
right. I like that it's you can like play it for 3 and then pop it for 5, because when you're going up against Blood Moon, it's really annoying to try and deal with that card, because like maybe you don't have the green mana or whatever for like Nature's Claim out of the board, or maybe you didn't board in Nature's Claim because you didn't know if they're going to board in Blood Moon or something like that. So I mean, I guess that just goes. It's a catch-all, right?
Right.
So, Worm Coil, it's at 3. You can go up to 4 if you want. If you're expecting a more aggressive metagame, then you should probably go with Worm Coil. And, but at least keep 4 of each of these in the main board and the sideboard, because you need threats in this deck. You can't assemble Tron on turn 3 and then just have nothing to play. A lot of the lists will, with these two guys, everyone runs the Emrakul with the Eye of Ugin, obviously, because that's your main win condition every single game is going to be you play Karn on turn 3 and they scoop, or you just get to Emrakul and they scoop. It's pretty much how every game goes. And then I use Ulamog as kind of a stepping stone to Emrakul, because there are many times where you're like almost at enough mana to be able to search up with Eye of Ugin and hardcast Emrakul, but not quite. So you just need to like buy a turn. So being able to dig up the Ulamog, destroy their most relevant permanent, and put a 10/10 in the way, and then untap, cast Emrakul, then you win. So I like him as kind of a stepping stone there. Anything you want to say about that, Sasha?
No, I like having him as a stepping stone as well. You just need something to do in the turns where you whiff on another Urza's Mine or something like that.
I've seen people like somehow exile the Emrakul too, which is really annoying. Like when they like can't they like surgical it or some other things to get rid of it? It's kind of annoying. I've had times where Emrakul somehow I wasn't able to cast it for whatever reason, and Ulamog was a very nice alternative, because he gets there if he's swinging in.
Definitely.
Sideboard. So the 2 worst enemies of this deck are Delver of Secrets, not the deck, but the card itself. Very aggressive cards like that are protected by counter magic. Even like Merfolk can this deck can have some issues with. Although the good thing about, well, I don't know. I mean, even Merfolk just turns your lands into islands and then bashes in. But Wormcoil gets in the way of Merfolk pretty well. Wormcoil is probably your best against Delver of Secrets, but yeah, and then the other one is Storm or Combo. So we actually have a lot of hate on Storm over here at the Grafdigger's Cage and the Thorn of Amethyst. Thorn of Amethyst is one of my favorite cards to play against Storm, and I really like the synergy with Ancient Stirrings, how you can kind of like dig for your things that you need against certain matchups. I'd imagine that even Infect would be pretty good against this deck. Although I've never tested.
Thorn, yeah.
I didn't think about Thorn against the Infect deck.
It's like a pseudo rule of law, so they can't really triple pump. It gives you another turn.
True. I don't know if you want. I mean, like that's what you have Spellskite for, though, right? Like, isn't that just a better 2-drop?
Like, the pseudo spell sky, it's like I wouldn't like harm you if you put them in like 1 or 2.
Yeah. Pyroclasm is good against them too.
Right, but it depends. Like the Ancient Stirrings is the key card at finding everything.
Yeah, Ancient Stirrings is so good in this deck.
It's insane.
We have Vandal Blast in the sideboard. I've actually just been kind of throwing this card into a lot of random sideboards, just mainly because I think it's very good. And I already had like 3 Nature's Claims, so I don't know if I needed a 4th, but Vandal Blast is obviously just killing artifacts. Same with Nature's Claim. The extra Worm Coil is for when you're going up against aggro. You just board that in. Same thing with the Batterskull. Batterskull and Worm Coil are both probably, actually, if I had to rank like the best sideboard cards against Jund, those 2 would easily be up there. I'm trying to think of like best sideboard cards against Jund.
Huntmaster's pretty good.
Huntmaster's pretty good, but you can deal with him. Like, because if you just like terminate the Huntmaster, it's not that big of a deal, right?
Right.
But like if you terminate a germ token or terminate a, I get, or like, and a lot of times when with Batterskull, like you have the mana to play it and hold open the return mana, right? So like they can't like Ancient Grudge it or
Yeah, they can't blow you out with it.
yeah, and it's immune to abrupt decay. You can't terminate a worm coil either. I mean, they still got two more to deal with. But yes, so Spellskite's for if you're going up against like an aggro deck, having the wall in the way, like against a red deck wins, and also to redirect bolts and whatnot. And also very much so against Infect, it's very good. And then you got this stuff for aggro and Jund. Pretty much it. I used to run with two Batterskulls back in the day, and I was very happy with both of them. But yeah, anything else on this deck, Sasha?
Not really. Like the Thorn of Amethyst is the most interesting card in the sideboard, and the Vanderblast is a nice inclusion from Return to Ravnica.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's pretty stock.
I would recommend not getting too greedy on the mana base. It is very colorless because the last thing you want to be playing on turn one is Grove of the Burn Willows or a Forest or an Eye of Ugin. Like you want to be playing Tron lands every single turn, and using the Chromatic Star and the Chromatic Sphere and the Expedition map to be like digging for your the rest of your Tron lands to assemble Tron. So if you try to run something like Ancient Grudge, it can get really awkward when you need like red mana and then green mana, because you have to play Grove of the Burn Willows, and you don't really want to be doing that.
Right.
So
Like the only exception I can think of is like Ancient Stirrings, turn one, like sideboard game to try to find the spell scout against Infect or something like that.
well, yeah, I mean you definitely do it if especially against against Infect. Like I think I don't know if you're less concerned about like just making sure that they don't kill you, or if you really want to just ramp out that turn three card, because Infect can definitely kill you before turn three. You know what I
Right,
mean?
but like a turn two spell scout pretty much hoses them.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would do it there. I'd be happier playing like Chromatic Sphere with a Tron land to be getting that green mana, but I guess that's a turn slower, right?
Right, really depends if you're the play or the draw and like what your hand is. A lot of factors go into it.
Right. Generally, you err on the side of just playing your